Happy Father's Day, everyone. If you haven't already, by all means, give yourselves a gift by clicking that subscribe button and notification bell and never miss a new video. You'll be giving me a little gift too, and I really appreciate it. Anyway, today the book is A Feast for Crows, and the show is the rest of season 4 and some of 5 of Game of Thrones. The book, it starts to change format a little with how they present each individual chapter, and we get our first glance at everything from Cersei's point of view, which we will get to shortly. Now, who is not in this book at all? Brandon Stark, who in the show is also completely out of the picture. Tyrion is not in this book. In the show, he's fled King's Landing on his way to Pentos, and he was intercepted by Ser Jorah to be presented as kind of a bargaining chip to get back into Daenerys' good graces. Also missing from this book is Daenerys, who in the show we know is freeing and taking over Meereen. There's also nothing about Jon Snow. While in the show he's taken in a handful of free folk who just survived a wildling attack, only to have that blow up in his face when they turn on him for later on forming an alliance with those wildlings in order to survive a wave of White Walker attacks. Now the book, it starts off with Cersei, and she has the most chapters in this book. There are 10 chapters on Cersei, starting with her being less than pleased at having to deal with what is left of Shae and Tywin after their bodies were found, and what we all know were some pretty compromised positions. Even less pleased at having Margaery Tyrell still around after Joffrey's death, and almost immediately losing Tommen to her so quickly. In the book, Tommen's an 8-year-old boy king, still being raised as his reign is beginning, and his relationship with Margaery is like that of a little boy and his favorite babysitter. She gives him Sir Pounce and his 2 other kittens as a wedding gift. Sir Loras is largely missing from the story in this book during, the whole Cersei versus Margaery story. In the show, he is the reason Margaery gets arrested by the Faith Militant. In the book, Cersei still gets Margaery arrested based on a drink order. Moon tea is rumored to have a secondary purpose as a contraceptive, according to Qyburn, and so Cersei uses that to base her accusation of infidelity, and therefore gets Margaery thrown in jail. Next is 8 chapters on Brienne of Tarth, as she continues her search for Sansa Stark. And while she's doing that, she is kind of sent on a wild goose chase for the Hound, hearing all these tales of atrocities committed by him. What she does not know is that in the last book, the Hound was overpowered and left for dead by the Brotherhood Without Banners, and her search for him ends with when a renegade wearing his stolen armor finds her first, and they engage in a battle similar to the one in the show that was with the actual Hound over Arya Stark. There are 7 chapters on Jaime, while he's at River Run trying to convince the remaining members of House Tully to give up River Run. And his chapters also include a lot of his inner monologue about how he is starting to doubt Cersei. There are 5 chapters on Samwell Tarly, as he travels to Old Town with Gilly and her baby, and with Maester Aemon, the last Targaryen, on Jon Snow's orders to obtain his Maester training. In the show, we know that it's what he wants to do because he's more book smart than he is a fighter. In the book, though, him learning to be a Maester is Jon's idea because it's the only way he can be useful to the Night's Watch. There are 3 chapters on Sansa, as she's living at the Eyrie under a false identity as Elaine Stone, the illegitimate daughter of Littlefinger, and she's spending most of her time watching her goofy little cousin Robin Arryn. So far in the book, she has not been introduced to the Boltons, and which, as a side note, there's also nothing in A Feast for Crows about the Boltons or what they are doing with Theon Greyjoy. There are 3 chapters on Arya Stark while she's in Braavos, living and training at the Temple of the Many-Faced God, learning to become no one, and having her day job selling seashells by the seashore. Now, there are 4 chapters about the Dornish, namely the Martell family and the Sand Snakes. Since we know that the Martell family has been shaken by the loss of Oberyn, and while they have Myrcella in their custody, these 4 chapters focus on different members and aren't really as personal as the chapters about the Starks and the Lannisters. There are 2 chapters on Princess Arianne Martell, who I don't even remember seeing at all in the show. One on some guy named Eris, and one on the Sand Snakes, particularly Obara. There are 5 chapters on 3 different Greyjoys, none of which are Theon. There's only 1 chapter on Asha, who we also know as Yara. The other 4 are 2 of which are on Aeron Greyjoy, and 2 about Victarion Greyjoy, who are Balon Greyjoy's brothers that are still there on the islands of Pike. And while they're not in the show, they have equal interests in the rulership of the Iron Islands, just as the pirate Euron makes his big comeback. And that pretty much covers what is the same and different about this section of Game of Thrones. And I thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week for The Omen.